Okay, we're going to get started. Glenn or anyone from Wendell, did you want to say anything to kick us off, or should I just jump right in?
Sure. Welcome everybody to the public meeting on the Hazard Mitigation Plan development. I'm very happy to have Jamie Caplan here, who's been working with us as a consultant on this project through a grant, and very eager to get your feedback. And folks who may be watching this on YouTube, we're going to have some ways for you to share feedback, even if you weren't able to attend the meeting in real time at this moment. So we look forward to your feedback, and Jamie, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. So the first thing that we're going to do is, if you have a telephone with you, a smartphone, or you're on a computer, and you can go to the website menti.com, menti.com. You don't download anything, and then put in this code 99835699. Or if you're really fancy, you can use that QR code on the screen. I tend not to be fancy. And I will show this to you again before you need to do it, but you should be able to view the presentation through that, and you'll also be able to participate. And if you get there and it's working, you can give it a thumbs up. There we go. We got some thumbs up. Remember, you don't have to download anything. And if you don't use this, it's not world ending. You'll still have a chance to participate. Okay. All right. Good job. All right. I'm going to move us forward, but I will show you all of this again. So again, welcome. My name is Jamie Caplan, and I have a consulting firm based in Northampton. And we do emergency management planning, and we do quite a bit of it in Massachusetts as well as nationwide. And for this project, I am joined by 3 other consultants, Darren Punchard, Bill Bond, and David Murphy. We do have David on the line with us today. So as a team, we're under contract with the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency to update and develop 14 plans throughout the state, and yours is one of them. So hazard mitigation, and this is an update to your hazard mitigation plan. When we mitigate risk, we're talking about any sustained action to reduce or eliminate risk to people and property from natural hazards and their effects. And I know with COVID, we've heard a lot about mitigating risk. But when we talk about it for natural hazards or disasters, if you will, we're really talking about what you're going to do on a nice sunny day with, nothing terrible going on, so that if we have extreme temperatures or heavy rains or high winds, you don't have a disaster. We can't prevent those things, but we don't have to have disasters. And when we invest in mitigating risk, we end up saving on average $6 for every dollar that we spend. So it's certainly worthwhile. Now, emergency management tends to be considered in 4 phases. Mitigation is just one of them. Preparedness is things that you're going to do when you know the disaster's coming, and you're going to get ready for it. Things like having first aid kits and flashlights and that kind of thing. Responding to a disaster, you can think about our firefighters and other first responders. And then recovery is sort of self-explained. You're putting life back together following a disaster. Mitigation is what our plan is all about, and it's everything you can do beforehand. You haven't had the disaster, you don't know when you're going to have it, but you want to make sure that you're going to be ready, and anything you can do to prevent it. So the hazard mitigation plan includes identifying actions and policies that you can take before a disaster occurs. We include the whole community in development and implementation of the plan. A hazard mitigation plan is a living document. So once it's finished, that doesn't mean it has to stay exactly as is. You can edit it as you wish. And having a hazard mitigation plan enables a community to be eligible for FEMA pre-disaster funding. So without the plan, you wouldn't be eligible for that pre-disaster funding. Now, some of the benefits of mitigation planning, it gives you an opportunity to identify cost-effective actions to reduce risk. It focuses your attention on the greatest vulnerabilities in a community. We do everything we can to build partnerships through the planning process, as well as create mitigation actions that will encourage partnership building. We're increasing awareness of hazards and risks, which I think can only benefit a community. The plan will communicate the priorities of Wendell. It aligns with other town objectives and ultimately can save you lives and money. So to develop this mitigation plan update, what we do is look to your previous hazard mitigation plan, which was from 2016. We look to the state hazard mitigation and climate adaptation plan from 2018. And myself and several others on our consulting team participated in developing that state level plan. And we also look to your Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Plan, which was developed just in 2021. So we look to all of these plans for what actions you've identified, what priorities you have, and then we do some of our own analysis as well as include you in the planning process. And that's how we come up with your 2022 hazard mitigation plan. So the timeline for us developing this project, we're at the tail end here. We began in February. We have had 2 public meetings, with this being the second one. And our next step is to finish up the plan following this meeting and give the plan to Massachusetts, to the state, for their review. And upon their review and approval, it goes to the Federal Emergency Management Agency for their review and approval. So one of the first things we did developing our plan is put together a hazard mitigation planning committee. This is a list of the folks who are named on the committee. We've had 4 hazard mitigation planning committee meetings. And these guys have been absolutely instrumental in putting the plan together. I'd say as a consulting team, we're very good at doing research and asking good questions, but we really rely on our planning committee to give us local information. And each of these guys has done a super job at that. So I'm going to ask you some questions. So I want to make sure that you're on the menti.com platform. Again, you need to put in this code, the 9983 5699, and that should give you the ability to participate. Is anybody having a hard time with it?
I am. I was in, and now it's stuck on instructions.
Oh, really? Well, it should.
Yeah.
You should see this slide.
No, I don't. I see this.
Yeah, I see a slide that says instructions and a clickable link with a thumbs up.
Okay. So then when I
Yeah.
click the next slide, you should see what natural hazards can impact Wendell.
Yep.
So
got
now
it.
Yep.
type in your answers. And anything goes. And we should see the answers pop up on the computer in real time. So somebody typed in tornado, you can type in it, I think up to 3 I gave it. Put in as many as you'd like.
So Jamie, I mean, you've already gotten all our input from the committee. We don't need to put it back in here again, do we?
Well, it's a nice way to participate, Joe.
All right.
There's other people on the line. Windstorms, drought, invasive species, those are good ones. wind, rarely a tornado, road flooding and fire, torrential rain, ice and wind. Good job. Drought. All right, is anybody still typing? Okay. I have a follow-up question for you. How does climate change impact those hazards and Wendell? And don't give me a dissertation, just some short answers. But any thoughts you have?
Yeah, Jamie, my presentation, it's not allowing me to go to the next slide.
Well, I get to go to the next slide. You get to type in your answers.
No, it's not letting me do that either.
Oh, really? Maybe refresh your screen. I'm not sure.
Yes, but it's not working.
Okay, I'm sorry, Joe.
That's all right.
Stronger storms makes many more likely. That makes sense. Anyone want to add in anything else?
Mine's not showing up.
Okay. All right, I'm going to keep us going. I'm sorry for those of you who it isn't working for. So that's some of the work that we do as a consulting team when we put a hazard mitigation plan together, is we consider all of the possible hazards. We also consider them in terms of climate change, and we tend to consider climate change as exacerbating hazards. The state hazard mitigation plan views hazards in terms of primary climate change interactions. So our plan for you, the Wendell plan, looks at hazards in exactly the same way as the state plan. It's a federal requirement that your plan be consistent with the state plan. And this seems like the simplest way to do it, especially since you have your Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Plan, which really focuses on climate adaptation. It made the most sense to use the same type of list. All right, and then one of the next things we do is try to consider which people, buildings, or infrastructure are most susceptible to storm damages and natural hazards. You know, we thinking about Wendell, what's there that really needs protecting and that could be impacted by any of these hazards or risks. Homes with older roofs is a very good answer, especially with those high winds or too much snow. Roads, people with the fewest resources, that's a terrific answer. Municipal buildings and school. Power and internet infrastructure, great. Buildings in disrepair, that's good. All right, so that's exactly the kind of work that we do, as well as we consider those hazards and then make a list of what we would consider to be your critical facilities. And this is the list that we're working with at the moment. So you can see we've named things like the police station, the post office, the town offices, town hall, the library, fire station, transfer station, the schools or camps in the area, your National Grid substation, the Diamond Egg Farm, because that's your largest business in the area, is considered, the sewer treatment plant, water supply well. You know, we make a laundry list, if you will, and try to make sure that we're considering each of these facilities.
I got a question.
Yeah, go for
I
it.
think the communication tower on Lock Hill Road has been taken down, hasn't it?
I can't answer that.
Oh, I think it was.
I
It
can-
has been taken down. It was taken down a few years ago. A
Okay,
big
so
pole-
we
up
can
at the
remove
top
it
of
from
that.
this list.
And is the sewer treatment plant the sort of shared septic for the municipal well? Is that what that is?
I believe so. This is David speaking. We were using the list that some of you provided in one of the iterations of
Okay,
looking at this.
thanks.
Thanks, David. All right, we'll just keep going here. Thanks, Asa.
Okay.
So as we consider your list of natural hazards, your list of critical facilities, we're laying them on top of each other in map form to come up with your risks, which is potential for damage or loss or other impact, created by the interaction of natural hazards and critical facilities. And we move forward to developing some maps to identify your most susceptible areas. And, oh, thank you for that edit. So tell me, which areas of Wendell are most susceptible to natural hazards and climate change? They can be specific roads or bridges, specific facilities. Culverts. Highest areas of town to wind damage. That makes good sense. Areas near ponds, okay. Forests and waterways. Roadways from tree damage. That's a good one. All right, so let me show you an example of one of the maps that we're working on, where we're showing a combination of flooding and your critical facilities. And so your hazard mitigation plan will have a number of maps in it, so you have the opportunity to sort of review these. And it's a very simple way to see, okay, what if my critical facilities are in floodplain or are prone to different hazards? And that leads you to begin thinking about, well, what can you do about that? So the hazard mitigation plan really has two big objectives. One is to look at how you can mitigate hazard impacts to existing community buildings and infrastructure. What exists today you're looking at. You also want to look to the future and develop the community in a way that does not increase risk. So as you know, I know Wendell hasn't had a huge amount of development, but as you do make improvements or changes or put up new structures, you want to make sure that you're doing it in areas that are not prone to risk. The hazard mitigation plan update has 4 goal statements. They have categories attached to them. The first priority is people, reducing or eliminating risk to people, property, and infrastructure from natural hazards and climate change. We have a goal related to education, conduct outreach and education to residents and business owners to increase their understanding of risks posed by natural hazards and climate change and how to mitigate those risks. Obviously, we want to have a resilient community, if you will. Capacity, expand the town's capacity to mitigate risk by including hazard mitigation concepts into local plans and regulations and collaborating with regional partners. And finally, infrastructure, harden both built and utility infrastructure to withstand natural hazards and climate change. So those are the goals of the plan. If the plan gets implemented, these are some of the things that you hope to achieve. So the next big step is to think about, well, what programs or improvements could Wendell implement to make the town more resilient to natural hazards? And we could also say to climate change. So what can Wendell do to make itself more resilient? You can type in any answers if it's working for you. Does anybody have any ideas? Backup power in buildings is perfect. Advocate for state and federal mitigation funding. I love it. Hopefully this plan will do some of that. Energy generators, battery, solar, emergency power. Follow best practices to monitor the condition of town buildings. That is a good one. Certainly in New England, we have a lot of older buildings. Install a generator for the school shelter. That's essential. Culvert improvements. This is a good list. Train citizens in emergency preparedness. And that relates directly to one of your goals. That's good. Clean water source, ability to treat water. That's good. Community solar and cap landfills. All right. So when we think about how you can mitigate risk, we come up with these mitigation actions, and mitigation actions tend to fit in one of these 4 categories: local plans and regulations. This could include land use ordinances, open space preservation, stormwater management. We also look to structure and infrastructure projects like the culverts you just mentioned. You can underground utilities, retrofit structures. So if you've determined that some buildings can't withstand risk, you could retrofit them. Building flood walls or retention structures, and obviously fixing culverts. The natural systems protection, this is can include sediment and erosion control, stream corridor restoration, forest management, wetland restoration and preservation. By protecting these natural systems, we tend to mitigate risk to our built environment. And then education and awareness, these are your biggest bang for your buck and tend to be my personal favorite, because if you have a well-informed community, you will be more resilient. So any kind of education and outreach that you can do, and these tend not to cost a tremendous amount. With each of your mitigation actions that's included in the plan, we include what we consider to be some essential details. So we describe the action, we assign a lead department within Wendell to implement that action. We identify any supporting partners. So that could be within town, or it could be regional planners or partners, excuse me. It could be nonprofit organizations, private industry, doesn't matter. We give an estimated cost and identify a potential funding source. And we also give an estimate for when this can be implemented and how long it will take. And then we finally, we prioritize all of those mitigation actions. So if all things being equal and you're trying to consider how to spend your money, you'd have identified high priority actions. So the idea here is to flesh out the ideas a little bit and move you in the direction towards being able to implement the actions or apply for grant funding. So some of the mitigation actions that are included in your plan are things that you all have already mentioned. Backup power at your critical facilities, expanding capacity of the fire department with additional staff, training, and equipment, upgrading culverts and replacing bridges that are inadequate, and developing community education and outreach so residents know how to improve their self-reliance and make the community more resilient. So there are a number, I believe we have over 20 actions in your plan, and this is just an example of a couple of them. One of the most important things you can do with the hazard mitigation plan is integrate it with your other plans that you have and other activities that you do. And so I show you this slide just as an example. So anytime you're doing any kind of land use planning, you want to consider your risks, any critical facility protection or infrastructure updates. Again, you want to be thinking towards current hazards as well as think to the future. What's climate change going to do to those hazards, and how can you develop responsibly? You want to consider natural resources protection. any historic properties and cultural resources. You can also integrate the plan into economic development plans, transportation planning, or housing development. So these are just some concepts and areas that you should be aware of. So I give you a final question, and that's, what can residents do to mitigate risk to their own homes or businesses? So what can each of you do, or what can your neighbors do that, that could help make them more resilient? Backup power, that's a good one. Lots of people in New England with generators. I'm one of them. Do a risk assessment, okay? Consider what is at risk on your property. Harden housing to protect from fire and install solar. That's a nice idea. Develop social networks. I like that. Good idea to have a sense of who's your, who are your neighbors and what might they need pre or post disaster. How can you help them be safe? Do you need to check on them? Any other ideas for what people can do? Oh, good. Clear trees away from homes. That's a very good idea. Basic preparedness, at least 1 week of food, ability to get water without power, storage, or manual pump. Good. These are great. Attend emergency preparedness trainings. That's terrific. That's certainly something that the town or the region could perhaps offer. All right. So you will have a chance to review the Hazard Mitigation Plan. The Hazard Mitigation Plan Committee has decided they'll put a hard copy in the town office entryway, so anybody can go there and look at it. There'll be links to the plan posted on several websites, including on the town website. So this is just an example of how this meeting was advertised on the town website. I believe that the library and the Council of Aging will also post links to the plan. The plan should be available in about a week to 2 weeks. We're a little bit behind schedule, but we're making progress. So in the next week or so, we'll put out an announcement and you can go ahead and take a look at the plan. When you do look at the plan, it will have 7 chapters plus an appendices. The chapter 1 is quite simply an introduction, but it does give some FEMA requirements in there, including changes to this plan compared to the previous plan. The planning area will be reviewed. So that describes the population in Wendell, the infrastructure, how land is used. Chapter 3, planning process, describes quite simply the process that we use to develop this plan. And that is a FEMA requirement that we document that process. The risk assessment will detail your hazard, all of the hazards, a profile for each one. For instance, what is a winter storm, and look to all the way through what it is to where it can occur and what's vulnerable to it. We'll list your critical facilities and then summarize your risks. The capability assessment goes into what is the capacity of Wendell to mitigate risk. Quite simply, what plans you have in place, what staff and resources you have in place. All of that will be included there. Chapter 6 is the most important piece of your mitigation plan. That lists your goals, which I showed you today, and the full list of mitigation actions with all the essential details. And then chapter 7 is the implementation and maintenance piece. So it discusses how this plan can be implemented. And just so you know, FEMA requires that hazard mitigation plans be updated every 5 years. All right. Any final questions? You can unmute yourself and ask, or you're welcome to type in any questions. If there's anything that I haven't gone over and you want to discuss, I'm happy to do that.
And do
Anybody?
you want feedback now, or do we need more information now about how feedback will be received?
You mean feedback for the plan itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, when we put out the plan, then we'll put a notice about how you can give feedback to it.
Okay.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments for today? All right, well, if you have any questions or things that you didn't get to mention and you would like to, you're welcome to reach out to me directly. We have recorded the meeting, so I'll send it to Glenn today and it will be posted, I believe, on the town's YouTube account.
That's right, with a link from the main website. So, and if folks can help spread the word about that so other people can get informed about what happened today, that would be great.
Terrific.
Thank you
Any
very
other
much, Jamie.
questions? Oh, no problem. Thank you. It was a pleasure. All right, well, that's it, everyone. Take care and have a nice day.
Thank
Okay, thank
you.
you.